Hey guys, how's it going? Here, welcome back to Overwatch, and this is going to be a start of a new thing I want to do every now and then. This is the Overwatch patch wish list. So, this wish list is kind of a list that we want to see in the next patch for Overwatch. Now, obviously, the patches go up on the PTR and then they go to live. So this is the next patch we want to see on the PTR. There was a big update to the PTR not long ago, on the 11th, and it's not really, there's no buffs or nerfs on there. It's just a new thing for roll queue and a few other things. It was a pretty big update though, so whether there might have been some backroom stuff going on, I don't know, but it seemed a really big update for what it was. But obviously the elephant in the room is the big update that's just gone to live servers, which is what we've called the barrier nerf, the big change to the game in terms of barriers. So I want to go over what it feels like at the moment, and honestly, this update is fantastic. I had a lot of reservations about this update going through with barriers because, in my opinion, there is too much damage flying around as well. There's a lot of power creep in Overwatch at the moment, and it's quite obvious when you look at heroes like Hanzo and Baptiste, who are doing a lot of damage for what they are. So I had a lot of reservations when they were so heavily nerfing barriers, and I was wondering maybe you should bring down a bit of damage as well. I'm not saying a massive nerf to damage, I'm saying bring it down a bit on certain heroes, just in line so that barriers just don't become non-existent. So now we've played the patch on live servers, it's incredible, and I think the biggest difference for me is Reinhardt. Reinhardt felt so almost unplayable before this patch went live, because he was just, if you're just going to stand there, your barrier was going to get melted. Your barrier was going to get melted, and generally if you were playing Reinhardt, a lot of people wouldn't play double barrier. They'd normally play a Zarya with it, especially at certain elos. So I think the Reinhardt changes, yes, he's had his barrier reduced, but it's not too bad. As long as you do a thing called feathering with his barrier, which is, you know, not permanently standing with it up, right? Feather it to when the damage is coming in, and you do that when you're moving forward generally, especially with old Reinhardt. If you're moving forward, you'll keep toggling your barrier in front of you to kind of negate incoming damage, but also move faster. With Reinhardt's speed buff to him moving when he's got his barrier up, it's kind of, you don't need to do that as much, but I still wouldn't be keeping your barrier up permanently. Don't be a shield bot, is what we're saying here. Don't be a barrier bot, because in this meta right now, being a barrier bot will get you killed. Simple as that. It's become brawly, and that's fantastic. The speed of the game is really fast, and I tell you what, out of all the tanks, Reinhardt at the moment, in my opinion, is the most fun to play. He's crazy. His passive knockback buff has really changed things in terms of Lucio boops and stuff like that. He's so much more, he's more tanky, don't get me wrong, with the armor buffs and everything, but also he's so much more fun. It's crazy. Reinhardt is so good to play right now. I think he's in the best spot he has been since well before GOATs, well before that. He's so interesting and fun to play. So if you're a tank main, pick up Reinhardt at the moment. He's real fun. When you look at it, look at Orisa. Orisa's still very viable, and double barrier is still very viable. But we are seeing, and it's very early days, don't get me wrong, we haven't seen a real meta emerge, but the tank line seems very flexible. The tank line seems very flexible. I've seen Dive run with success. I've seen Reinhardt Zarya run with success. I've seen Orisa Reinhardt run with success. I've even seen Sigma run with good success with various other tanks paired with him. So it's really good at the moment, and I've even had success on D.Va, which pleases me a lot, although I'd like to see D.Va a bit stronger than she is right now. So this is where we get onto the problem though. So we've got a good variety in the tanks at the moment. That might change in the future, but at the moment we've got it. In the supports and the DPS, and the DPS mainly, is where we get to the problems. So in the supports recently, we've been heavily Moira Baptiste, right? Moira, not so much now because of her healing nerf, but Moira is still very viable. Baptiste, though, Baptiste is OP. I don't think anyone's going to deny that right now. Baptiste, with his immortality field, his high damage output, which basically equals, if not beats, Soldier 76 of the DPS category, which is something that's not right, let's be honest. His healing output is fantastic. His general survivability is really good. And his ultimate's really good. So, Baptiste is by far the best support right now. Because he does such a variety of things. And there's a video going to come up pretty soon on the channel about hybrid heroes. And I think it's something we need to talk about because Baptiste is one of these hybrid heroes. And sometimes these hybrid heroes can get out of control. And Baptiste will be meta. Absolutely will be meta right now. Because he is so strong. If you're a support player and you play Baptiste, you're going to do very well. I'm sure you are. So, the question is, who are you going to play without Baptiste? Well, you've got a variety of options, but at the moment, Zen is having a comeback, because Zen can do damage. He can finally do damage, because barriers have been nerfed. So, he's actually pretty good at breaking the barriers right now in their current state, but his Discord Orb, obviously, really good, taking down the tanks and all that. So, Zen's seeing a comeback, but also, like, it's fairly flexible in the support role, but Baptiste is kind of the key one here. Baptiste is kind of the... If we were in the Overwatch League right now, I think we would see Baptiste picked by everyone right now, because he is so strong. Then we come to DPS, and this is where everything falls down. And it's kind of ironic, right? The DPS category is by far the biggest category with the most heroes in it in Overwatch, yet it's got the least, should we say, meta-viable variety in it. Because when we're looking at the DPS right now, we're looking at Mei. Mei is incredibly strong. And, yeah, I kind of saw this coming. I'm not going to say, oh my god, I saw this coming years ago. But, I'm sorry, Mei's been a sleeper for a very long time. Going back a good year or so, Mei has been a sleeper in the meta. And then once Goats disappeared, all of a sudden, the sleepers, which was Orisa at the time, was starting to come to the forefront, and then we saw Mei. And Mei has got to have some changes. Mei and Baptiste are the two big ones here. They need some changes, because they are too powerful. They are too powerful. At the top of the ladder, I am almost certain you're going to see majority of Baptiste, Mei. Because they are so darn powerful. Mei, we'll talk about what we think needs to be done in a minute. But Mei is mighty powerful. Other DPS, Hanzo, very high damage output. And with Hanzo, he was already very good at breaking shields. And that's why we saw so much of Hanzo in the previous meta. But he's now going to melt those shields quicker and start doing real damage. So Hanzo's damage output is really, really good. So we're probably going to see a pretty amount of Hanzo. McCree's going to do pretty well because obviously less barriers, more McCree. We're not seeing a rejuvenation of Widowmaker right now or anything like that. I'm not surprised because Widow is great at getting the early pick, right? Or getting a pick that will change the fight. But for raw damage output, which is what the meta revolves around right now, you've got to look at heroes like Hanzo, McCree, Reaper, Mei. And if Mei is really strong in the meta, you're going to be going for heroes more down the route of Reaper and Hanzo. Because high damage output, Mei's going to freeze them, and we know that Reaper's been pretty powerful for the past couple of months. And Reaper is going to continue to be that way. So I think Reaper could do with some adjustments. Maybe his lifesteal. I think there was some changes back when Goats was meta, and I think some of those changes need to be reverted, which they were for Lucio, I believe. I think some of those need to be reverted to bring some DPS heroes back under control. Because I think they've escalated out of control now that 222 is here. Because they were buffed previously to stop metas that now cannot possibly exist, i.e. Goats. So, changes that could be made to certain heroes. Now Mei, back when Goats was meta, Mei had a buff that allowed her to freeze multiple targets with her primary fire. That, in my opinion, definitely needs to be reverted. Without a doubt, I think that needs to be reverted. I would like Mei's freeze duration to be reduced and the slow effect to be reduced, but I don't know whether we'll see that. In my opinion, I just think she needs to do less slowing and then not slow multiple targets. And I think we might see Mei in a more decent place than she is now. I think Mei, she's just too powerful at slowing down targets and slowing multiple targets. I think that's way too powerful. Hanzo, a lot of his problem is his storm arrows more than anything else. Maybe reduce it by one storm arrow, or maybe reduce the damage output of storm arrows. One thing I've always thought about with Hanzo, and especially storm arrows since it's been introduced, should storm arrows really be doing headshots? I know it's a silly thing in terms of like, well, of course they do headshots. If you hit them in the head, you hit them in the head. But in terms of like balance, should storm arrows do headshots? I don't know. I'm of the opinion that maybe they should just do normal damage, because if Hanzo hits a lot of headshots with storm arrows, he's deleting people left, right, and center, and I'm not sure it's brilliant. Again, this is just my opinion, and you can leave your own opinions in the comments below. So, if you've got any opinions in terms of what you think needs changing for certain heroes, then please do let me know, because there are some DPS areas that definitely need looking at, and Baptiste needs looking at as well. Reaper, we've already been over. I think Reaper needs his lifesteal nerfed back to what it was before Goats, because it was buffed during Goats to try and make him more durable to counter Goats. It didn't counter Goats, and they didn't revert it. So when 222 came in, all of a sudden people were like, Reaper's pretty tanky now. And the same thing with Mei. You'll notice Mei is pretty tanky. So both heroes kind of need to be a bit less tanky, because if you look at it, and Mei especially here, she's almost like an off-tank. At times, she's almost like an off-tank. She's got so much survivability, so much sustain, so much CC, and then she's got a wall which basically acts as an opaque barrier. She can block damage with it, so it's like almost like a third barrier, especially when you're in double barrier meta. So I think survivability, especially for Reaper and Mei, needs to be looked at. Then we look at Baptiste. Baptiste, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Immortality field is always going to be a very strong thing, and I was honestly surprised that they brought it into the game, considering the trials and tribulations they've had with Defense Matrix. Defense Matrix is a bit different though, because to destroy Defense Matrix you have to destroy D.Va's Meg, whereas with Immortality field you can just destroy the drone. So the possibility here is two things, I think, for Baptiste. I don't think his healing output needs nerfing. I think that's fine. I think he needs his damage output nerfed, and I think he needs perhaps a little bit of a reduction on the HP of his Immortality field. Not much. I don't think there's much needs to be done to Baptiste to bring him in line, but I think something does need to be done, because I think Baptiste is possibly one of the strongest, if not the strongest heroes in the game right now. So that's kind of the wish list. If I was a Blizzard dev, this would be my wish list. This would be my next patch. It would be nerfs to the survivability of Mei and Reaper, so Reaper's lifesteal would be nerfed. Mei, perhaps, survivability is a difficult one for Mei. It's a difficult one. Perhaps reduce the health of her, or duration of her ice block, and then take away her multiple target freeze, and see where we go from there first of all, because you can always, patch it again at a later date. With Baptiste, I think I definitely say we're going to nerf your damage output in some way. Whether that means a fall off, whether that means an increase in spread, perhaps, or just a straight up nerf in damage output. There's options there. And then I will probably reduce a bit of the HP on his Immortality field, and then see where we go from there with Baptiste. Because you don't want to slam them with nerfs, because then they become absolutely useless, don't they, Brigitte? Don't play Brigitte. But that is it. That is my opinion on what we should see in the next patch, which probably won't be until January. So, it's all nerfs, right? It's all nerfs. And the reason for that is I don't think we need to see any more power creep in Overwatch. I think there is a problem with it at the moment. It's why Orisa became as powerful as she is. And it's something that I think just needs to be reined in. So, if I was Blizzard, I wouldn't be concentrating on buffing people, I'd be concentrating on nerfing people. That's what they've done with this patch mainly. And so I would like to see that next patch, but for some slightly different heroes like Mei, Reaper, and Baptiste. But I'm going to leave here for this one. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.